Thank you, Pedro. Can you hear me, Cuba? All right. For the moment, at least, we managed to pass through the blockade around the embassy, up into space, across the world, and down past the blockade on Cuba. So this moment that we have together reflects something important that's happening in the world, which is a way to bring different parts of the world together to breach through such extrajudicial, coercive, immoral blockades like the one that Cuba suffers and like the one that the Wikileaks organization suffers. And so bring about a new international solidarity, a new international body politic, which becomes aware of itself and its values. And once being aware of its values, can unite together to fight for those values. The situation that Cuba has faced over the last 50 years is very interesting to me, is very close to me. Because why I have been fighting a blockade of my organization and my people for about 3 years, Cuba has fought a blockade for 50. And there are many similarities, and I have learnt some things about how Cuba has faced that restriction with determination and with principle and with unity, but also with a lot of cleverness. Similarly, in the blockade against the WikiLeaks organization, we have had to do the same thing, to fight it with determination, principle, unity, and a lot of very clever tricks, and with the help of our friends. The origins of the US blockade against Cuba, well, I do not need to tell you them, but they are the desire for Cuba to be an independent nation. And the desire for the blockade against WikiLeaks comes from just one thing, our desire to speak independently about the United States, to have self-determination in what we say history is. Similarly, for Cuba to have self-determination for its people. In response to the blockade against us, we have been in a state of war with the United States. And it means that we have had to become a different type of organization, in some respects, to the organization that we would be if we were not facing a blockade. I do not say that WikiLeaks is a perfect organization. Like all of us, we are only too human. And I do not say that Cuba is a perfect nation. Like all nations, it has its problems. But what I do know, as someone who has led our way through and fought the blockade against my organization for only just 3 years, what limits that places on our ability to be everything that we would like to be. We started with a desire to collect and protect the true history of the world, because it is from the history of who we really are that everything that is good is derived. Every human decision that occurs in the world occurs based upon what we know. And if we do not know our world, how can we possibly live in our world? Decisions are based upon the true history, including the recent history, of what we are, or they are based upon a fantasy, an illusion, or blackness. And it is only the decisions that are based upon who we truly are that can make sense in the real world that we live in. Every other decision is like to roll a dice before the future. It shouldn't be the case that the true history of the world is so threatening to the government of the United States. But it is.
Pero así es.
If we go back to 2010, when we first started to publish hundreds of thousands of classified documents about the war in Afghanistan. The Pentagon made a press conference before the whole world to tell the whole world a demand. They demanded that Wikileaks and me personally destroy everything that we had published from the Pentagon. They demanded that we destroy everything that we were going to publish from the Pentagon. And they demanded that we cease dealing with US military whistleblowers.
Mr. Assange, thank you very much for this huge opportunity for us, Cuban journalists, and this group of students who are here. Really thank you, and I'm not quite sure if you are aware of how moved we are because you're wearing a tie, a yellow ribbon. Thank you very much for that, because it's a very important cause for us.
I believe in the rights of these people, just like I believe in the rights of my people. My lawyer, a very good friend of mine, Michael Ratner, has fought for years for the freedom of the Cuban Five and represented one of the interventions in 2009 in the Supreme Court in the United States to try and have them released. So I am aware of the case.
Students are gathered after our week in the workshop. It's from a couple of bloggers, journalists, and young students who would like to have your opinion about certain issues, such as precisely the Cuban Five case. You have been a victim of media manipulation. You are well aware of the power of the big media to lie. We have many cases like that here in Cuba. One of them is the manipulation of the Cuban Five trial. What's your opinion about how the Cuban Five trial was handled by the American media? And do you have any suggestions about how the truth can come through?
We live in a mediaocracy. That means every decision we make is based upon what we know. Noam Chomsky has said that the media is to democracy as the baton is to a dictatorship. It is a core ingredient for managing and controlling the decisions of people. The case of the Cuban Five is clearly an extremely political matter in the United States. It's one of the more obviously, overtly politicized cases. It is a disgrace that in fact anyone could spend that long in a US prison, let alone these five individuals from Cuba. The internet offers for the first time in a long time the most powerful tool to break through the manipulation and control of the media. And the success and power of the WikiLeaks organization and several others represents that ability. For Cuba, it also represents the ability for Cuba to tell its own story, for all those who are willing to listen. But still, we have a very big fight on our hands. The internet permits almost everyone to say what is true, but giant distribution companies try and fight the truth by diluting it, not simply to censor the truth out of existence, but to bury it entirely in a sea of lies. This is the challenge that we all face now, to stop this most important tool of global civilization, which we can use to solve global problems, come to a new international consensus, a new body politic, from being captured on the one hand by massive distribution companies like Disney or Time Warner, and on the other hand, to be captured by the United States and its allies as the largest, most aggressive worldwide surveillance machine ever. This is the fight of our age.
Cuban blogger Joanny Sanchez presents herself as part of an independent opposition. Nevertheless, Wikileaks has shown the close relation between Joanny and the American diplomats who work in Havana. The published documents demonstrate that the interview that she says she made to Barack Obama was fabricated. All this information is relevant news. Why do you think the big media, mass media, has not informed about it?
The media have an agenda. All media are funded by a particular mechanism, have friends coming from a particular realm. Those media who pretend that they do not come from a certain perspective are the ones that are the least trustworthy. But we all must know what the agenda is. We must know what the perspective is. In this clash of perspectives where we know the agenda, we can distill the truth. Of course, the US media is very close to the state in the United States. The media in the United States is the establishment media. Those are big, powerful organizations, and regardless of how they start, they end up sitting at the table with power and becoming its agent. In our publication of the US diplomatic cables, we documented a great range of censorship. You can have a look at cabledrum.net, and we detail thousands of instances of the Western media removing paragraphs or sentences from our cables. I must say that Cuba has no need to fear the truth. The reality of its situation means it does not need to fear the truth. What it needs to fear is lies. We can sometimes feel here and there that the truth will sting us. But when your big enemy is a sea of lies, the truth is your friend. And we can see that in the US diplomatic cables that we released about Cuba. These were even written from the perspectives of US ambassadors. But still, overall, the inside perspective favored Cuba's struggle. In relation to people like Sanchez, I have seen this in many different countries. There are problems with all countries. It is important for people to talk about the problems in their country, but it is also extremely important to not become a puppet of another country, to become corrupted in that way. Funding of opposition voices by the US government, by the Swedish government, and others has had a very negative effect. Because now when we see a Cuban blogger saying something about Cuba, we don't know what is their agenda. Are they complaining about a matter that is genuine and should be reformed? Or are they effectively a propaganda agent of the United States? This behavior I'm not speaking about this particular case because I don't know the details, but this behavior in general of accepting money and resources from the United States tarnishes all people who have complaints, removing credibility from all of them, even those who are genuine.
We would like to know a little bit more also about your case, and we have a question about it. Anna Ardin has been related with terrorist organizations that are against Cuban revolution, which are in Miami and who have worked with the CIA for more than 50 years. The accusation that Ardin made against you could be related with her close relation with the CIA?
I have not been charged with an offence. It may be surprising to some of you, but I have not been charged in the UK or in Sweden at any time. But I have been detained for over 3 years, and there is an attempt to extradite me to Sweden. At the same time, the US government is conducting what it calls a whole of government investigation of unprecedented scale and nature into me and my publishing organization. One of my alleged sources, Private Bradley Manning, has just been sentenced to 35 years in prison in the United States. The only allegation against him is that he provided me with information to communicate to the public. No allegation that even a single person was hurt as a result of those publications. No allegation that he received any money for providing us, allegedly, with that information. No allegation that he wanted to make revenge on the United States. That he wanted to communicate the truth about the war in Afghanistan and the criminal aspects of US foreign policy to the world. Within the context of these two cases, the uncharged investigation in Sweden, which was previously completely dropped, and this enormous ongoing effort to dismantle the Wikileaks organization and prosecute me. The government of Ecuador granted me political asylum. Now the UK government refuses to recognize international law and permit me to receive that asylum in Ecuador, trapping me in the embassy for 500 days. In relation to the person you spoke about and their activities in Cuba, of course I am very interested in that. But because the case is also ongoing and legal in its nature, it is difficult for me to speak about it. However, we just filed 2 criminal cases in Sweden and in Germany about the intelligence activities against me in those 2 countries at that time in 2010. And if you go to wikileaks.org, you can see the 200-page filing detailing those activities.
You've insisted in the need of save yourself and keep WikiLeaks working. Would you think that's possible, even though if you're not there for WikiLeaks?
When I was in prison, in solitary confinement in this country, without charge, for 10 days, our team kept publishing. In fact, they like to joke that we published more in those 10 days than the normal 10 days because I wasn't there. I have complete confidence in our people to continue the organization, even if I'm in a very difficult position. I have been in several difficult positions. That said, the organization would lack something of its central guiding spirit, perhaps in the same sense that even though Fidel Castro is not leading in a formal sense Cuba now, his authenticity of his original motivation is still present and important. In relation to what happens if I'm in the United States, well, we know from Bradley Manning what will happen. That is not going to happen. It is not going to happen. Similarly, a transfer out of Sweden to the United States or crushing me in Sweden is not going to happen. It is not going to happen for a very simple reason, because we're not going to let it happen, and because our friends are not going to let it happen, because governments like Ecuador have seen what is happening in this situation, have assessed it, and their people have given the government the correct political will to say this is not going to happen. Similarly, when the US and the Pentagon demanded to the world that we destroy everything that we had published, were going to publish, and cease functioning as an organization, or else we would be compelled to do so. That's the words of the US government, compelled. We said no, that's not going to happen. And we did not destroy a single document. We published all the documents we were going to publish, and the organization continues on. It comes from the will and strength and solidarity to say, no, that is wrong, it is not going to happen.
journalists admire the cause of Wikileaks. We share your values and we understand your situation as well as the Cuban people. What can Cubans do to help Wikileaks defeat the US blockade?
Very interesting question. Well, you know, WikiLeaks, in order to deal with the blockade, we've had to start bank accounts in lots of different countries. We've made many different lawsuits. We've made motions at the European Parliament, some of which have succeeded, complaints at the European Commission, started up organizations in the United States, like the Free Press Foundation, to try and work around these blockades, done special things in France to try and work around them, etc. And Cuba has a very similar experience, trying methods to work around the blockade and also to draw attention to what is going on. So I think to draw this parallel with the groups that Cuba is used to drawing that parallel with, to say, look, this is the same sort of situation that WikiLeaks faces. This is a very modern thing. Maybe you've all gotten bored of the Cuban blockade and talking about that, but it's not just Cuba. This sort of political censorship of economy and information flow. This is something the United States is not just applying to Cuba, it's applying to other organizations as well. And who's going to be next? The reality is there is no self-determination, there is no sovereignty without economic sovereignty. There is no proper sense of a nation or a community without information sovereignty, without being blockaded in and isolated in terms of information flow. These are very important matters, not just for states, but also for organizations, groups, communities, and languages. But speaking specifically, well, we always need many people for many different things. We're running a global organization that's had 95% of its income blockaded, 95%. And of course, our people are under all sorts of investigations and threats and activities by the FBI done unlawfully in different countries. The Icelandic government found formally that the US had deployed secret FBI agents to Iceland to interfere with our activities. You will know, of course, about this situation with Edward Snowden that we're involved in managing to help him get out of Hong Kong safely and secure his asylum in Russia, and also secure asylum offers from other countries in Latin America. That has not made us the favorite media organization of the world in Washington. So if you want to help in some concrete way, and we're a big organization, so there are many different things that we do, then speak to someone who knows us, maybe Pedro Miguel, for example.
Yes, we have talked to Pedro Miguel. We've had a very productive workshop with him. He has told us a lot about WikiLeaks, Edward Snowden, Bradley Manning, yourself, and it's been a very, very interesting week because we've known closer your story. In a way, WikiLeaks has already helped Cuba because has demonstrated with the leaks that you've done a bunch of things that the United States is doing against Cuba. Yeah. The documents are the proof of things that we already know that are happening but are very important for us. But we would like your opinion or maybe information that we don't know about. What can WikiLeaks do to help Cuba to defeat the US blockade?
Cuba has a lot more experience with this. You know, I think we have a lot more to learn from Cuba about how to deal with the blockade. But we've been in the past 3 years fighting this, and I suppose there are perhaps some lessons about how WikiLeaks has been fighting its blockade. It's been hard work for us to fight a blockade that has taken 95% of our revenue over 3 years, together with many other types of attack that the US government has made. And to do this for to do this for 50 when you're only 80 miles from the coast of Florida, I am immensely impressed. I know something of how hard it is, but I do not know what it is like to do it for 50 years. But I think this point of the right to economic sovereignty and economic self-determination, and the right to informational sovereignty and informational self-determination, and these being an international right that the international community must try and enforce for everyone's benefit. A right that must not be abridged, at least without the authority of the UN Security Council or other international bodies. This is a right that many people can agree on. No organization wants to have what has been done to WikiLeaks happen to them. And no country and no people want to be blockaded in the appalling manner in which Cuba has been blockaded. But that said, blockade is not all bad. In WikiLeaks, it has caused us to diversify, to have many different economic relationships. So when one is grabbed by the United States, we can continue to survive, to become self-reliant. And I also see this happening in Cuba. Keep fighting. Never give up. Thank you, Pedro. I think many drinks actually will be called for when I get to Cuba. A great many. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.